Hello and welcome to Who is Speaking with Oseloka Zikora. The speaker for this special edition is a retired general in the Nigerian Army, a one-time senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, a former military governor, and an ambassador, and also equally a business mogul, one I would love to describe as a perfect gentleman. He wouldn't want me saying this, but he's also a quiet philanthropist. Permit me to welcome to Who is Speaking, Senator Tunde Jonathan Ogbeha. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start from your early recollections. Born 75 plus years ago, how was your childhood like? What are the fondest memories you can remember?
Well, I had a very happy childhood. Born by very caring parents and also loving siblings. Though my parents were of middle class range, but they were able to cater for all my needs, educationally, socially, and others. So it was a very, very wonderful, happy growing up. And I had very good friends. I made very good friends, and I enjoyed my schooling days too.
How many siblings do you have, sir?
Originally we were four, 2 boys, 2 girls. Unfortunately, we lost the boy in a plane crash.
Was the elder brother?
No, I'm the second to an elder sister.
Great.
In the family.
Okay. I'm just wondering how a Lokoja young boy after secondary school would opt for the military school. What was it that attracted you to go into the military school?
Yeah. Well, let me just correct this notion. I didn't, most of my early days were not spent in Lokoja. My dad was a police officer. Well, first and foremost, my secondary education was really in the military as a boy, as a boy soldier then.
Okay.
I attended military school after my primary school education. I gained entrance into military school at the age of 13, 14. And of course, we combined secondary education with military. Similar to what was happening in the government colleges then, when you had as hobby or as part-time military training. But this was solely military training because after your school start, you are fed into the mainstream of the military and there you progress. But the attraction was that first, my dad being a uniformed policeman, I was taken into uniforms, and then helping my mom to sell her wares like bread, petty trader to do this thing. I got in touch with military men who, then I was in Maiduguri in Bendel State, now Bendel State. I was in Maiduguri, and we had this plebiscite with the northern Cameroons to join Nigeria or not, and then the soldiers came camping close to our house, and I interacted with them in like selling things to them, fetching them this thing, and it attracted me. The uniform and the comradeship I saw among the soldiers then attracted me to joining the military. So when, and in all honesty, my parents didn't know I was joining the military. I, on my own, took the entrance exam, field military, and my parents thought I was going to St. Paul's College in Zaria, which I passed, and I prepared for that. But on the way to Zaria, I changed my mind and went to military school because I also passed. And I was in military school for the first 3 months. My parents didn't know I was there until when I came for a holiday and they saw me obviously in uniform. My mom was shocked and disheartened. But my father encouraged me, and that was how I joined the army.
Was it fortuitous? Can you describe that as being fortuitous? And on, by virtue of what became of you, what has become of you, what was your mother's response?
Well, on hindsight, I think she liked the experience, the adventure, but initially she despised it and wished I could change my mind to go to where they sent me to. But I refused, and I was encouraged by my dad. Said, all right, if that is what you want, go ahead.
And you had quite a checked military career, and we'll talk about that later. But now, your birthday is today. You'll be 76. And I'm wondering, what is it that is uppermost in your mind as you celebrate this day?
Well, it's not quite a celebration. It's just to give thanks to God for keeping me and protecting me and ensuring that He gave me the grace to reach this age. It's a privilege, and I don't take it for granted.
And you really don't look 76. You look quite younger than that. What's the secret, sir?
It's by the grace of God, and actually I cannot tell you if there is any secret, but I must tell you that it's by the grace of God. And then doing those things that one ought to do to keep fit.
You married with how many children?
Well,
and grandchildren?
Grandchildren 2.
Okay.
Children 4.
4.
Yes.
And your wife. So any lessons of life that you would like to share with us?
Yes. First, I think in life you have to be humble. I came from a humble background, and that taught me to be humble, to be trustworthy, to be honest and hardworking, and then to be pleasurable to every human being.
Any regrets that given another chance to live life all over again, you will say, hey, this I wouldn't do?
I have no regrets. Given another chance, I would like my path to take the path that is been given to me by God. And of course, I would also like to be in the army again, because I find it very reforming in the nature of life. It's reforming. It teaches you a lot of things, teaches you perseverance, teaches you how to surmount difficulties, and it's a good process.
It's a rewarding experience.
Yes.
Now let me come to one hobby that I know you love so much. That's music. What type of music do you love listening to?
2 categories of music. One, the church music, the Anglican hymns, and of course classical music on the other side of the divide.
What's the best hymn?
It's difficult to tell you what the best hymn, because each hymn has its own, not just best hymn, but the lyrics.
Yes.
Are also very important to me. But I would be lost to tell you which is my best hymn. But there are some favorite hymns.
Okay, well, can you just name one?
Well, Let There Be Light is one of my hymns.
Okay.
Fight the Good Fight.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Good. Do you play any instrument?
Unfortunately, no. I had the opportunity of playing instruments, but I never took it serious. I wish I could play the organ or the piano.
You love, I know that you love organ music a lot.
Yes, I do.
And do you sing?
Yes, I was in the choir in my formative years in school. I was a member of the choir. as a matter of fact, I was forced into being a choir by my parents, and I eventually loved being a member of the choir.
This is who is speaking, and my special guest has been Senator Tunde Ogbeha, who I've been talking with about his early life, what are the experiences he has had so far. When we will come back, we'll talk about his military career, his role in governance, and he will also speak up on some other issues. So don't go away, we'll be back. Welcome back to Who is Speaking. My pleasure again to have Senator Tunde Ogbeha on the program. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Well, I said I'd love to discuss a little bit about your military career, about your days in the army. You had what I call a very exciting career. You were part of the changes that we had in the second time that the military would come into governance in the country. Can you share what it was like playing some of these roles?
Well, except you want to be specific, I don't know which roles.
All right. Okay, let's talk about the changes that occurred in the military governance in 1983 and then in 1985.
Well, those changes were driven by patriotic acts. We saw the military as the last port of call for Nigerians, and we saw the military as the only organization, the only entity that could save Nigeria, because Nigeria was sinking deeply, and therefore I thought we moved to rescue the nation, and I think we did our best in bringing some sanity to the nation state of Nigeria.
Now let's come to the 1985 coup after that of 1983. You, Brigadier General David Mark, and perhaps Colonel Lawan Gwadebe were famously referred to as the IBB boys because because of your closeness to the former head of state, President Ibrahim Babangida. And some would say that's why you struck in 1985 was driven by the fact that you wanted to put your friend General Babangida into power as head of state. Would that be a right conclusion?
No, because in the first coup, most of us thought it was General Babangida who would head the government, because he was a fine officer, a brilliant officer, and we all believed in him. But he allowed General Buhari to head the government. So it's not because we wanted him there, it's because of the patriotic need that Nigeria required at that time. And we thought that if the military did not intervene, there may not be Nigeria.
That's as it were in the 1985.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, many would look at that time, and given the experience, the recent experiences, people are beginning to understand better perhaps why you had to strike in 1985. But let's talk about some of your distinguished roles in governance, and especially in this Fourth Republic. But we'll begin first with, you are credited actually with bringing a lot of influence into the creation of Kogi State, your home state, and people attribute that to your friendship again with General Babangida. I know that you don't like taking any credit for that, but can you just give us a little bit background to that.
Yes, it's true that I had a role to play. You know, in this sort of thing, God has a way of using people to achieve certain results. At a time that the creation of Kogi State was waning away, I had the privilege, as you said, yes, I was close to General Babangida. I worked with him very well, and as a senior officer, I believed in him, and as a younger officer, he also believed in me, and our paths crossed very well. So I put a lot of pressure on him, and he obliged, and of course Kogi was created. All these are now stories and history.
Yes.
But I don't want to go into the personal efforts and sacrifices I made for Kogi State to be created.
Actually, when you talk about the divine nature of it, because some of the stories that I've read, that you at a particular moment that decision was being taken, you were outside the country, but how somehow you got an inkling of what was happening, and then you had to put on still some pressure.
No, not quite. I was not. I went out of the country after I was very sure that Kogi State was going to be created.
Okay.
And when my last visit to General Babangida, then Abuja was a crawling town to become capital. I was in Jaji in Kaduna State. I had to take a trip, and it went to the wee hours, and by the grace of God, he decided that yes, okay, he was going to create Kogi State. And I tried to lobby my colleagues, my friends, and my seniors, who eventually will have to take the decision.
Yeah.
And this was where it was until I left. Even when I left, I was still keeping in touch with those I think matter.
Yeah.
And to the glory of God, it happened.
But it wasn't just about your closeness to Babangida. He asked very probing questions. He just didn't dash you Kogi State.
No, he didn't. Because at the first call, the creation of Kogi State was stepped down. And at a point in time, I thought that was the end of the matter. But it resurrected. We put a lot of pressure, and it happened.
You ask questions about viability, about things like that.
Yeah, viability is common. How many states are viable? But you see, the thing is that the creation of states brings people nearer to government. And people can interact with their government. Before then, you know, we're in Lokoja and the headquarters was in Ilorin. And for you to, for state officials to do anything, they have to go to Ilorin, maybe a travel line of about a day or two. You get there, you've got to sleep. But creation of state brings people closer to government. And that is the principal aim. The issue of viability, well, thank God we're a federation, we're able to stand for each other, and the resources are fairly well distributed for states to be on their own.
But then Lokoja had played quite some major roles for Nigeria before then. But let's talk about this issue of governance, that's the states being closer to the people. You had the singular honor of being the first actually military governor for the newly created Akwa Ibom State. How was it like starting off a new state?
I was encouraged by the enthusiasm of the people. The people have been agitating for a state for a very long time. And when it came, their joy knew no bounds. They were happy. I was generously received. And in fact, by the time I got to Uyo, for instance, many landlords, many prominent people offered their houses for the government to take off. And the government took off. I had no difficulty about the government taking off because I looked at it as a military duty, and that's how I approached it. And today, when I see Akwa Ibom, I'm glad that
that decision was taken.
Yes.
A year plus later, you were posted to Bendel State, the old Bendel State, and can you compare both states, your challenges in both states?
Well, one state is new, the other state has been on, so you are moving from a newly created state to a state where infrastructures are decaying and required some renewal and rehabilitation. So there were two different things. Here you are in Akwa Ibom, people are eager to work for the state, for the success of the state, and people were happy. In Bendel, here you are with an old state, even though people are happy, but they may be disillusioned because certain things are not getting to them. So you've got to balance it. You got to work out how you approach governance in those two states, and obviously they were different. They're absolutely different. In Bendel, there were a lot of challenges because I usually classify Bendel in those days as a mini Nigeria, because it's actually a mini Nigeria where almost all tribes are represented in Bendel, as it were then. And it was not too difficult, but not as easy as Akwa Ibom.
As Akwa Ibom State. You were elected senator representing Kogi West in 1999, and you were there up until 2007, when you voluntarily withdrew from the politics of contesting elections. And tell me about your experience in the first and second Senate of this Fourth Republic.
Yeah, it was very interesting. It was not easy to leave the uniform for a civilian outfit, but adaptability was very quick. One was very quick in adapting to civilian role, to democratic role, and it was interesting. And I came to believe and learn that democracy, in spite of its inadequacies, is the best form of government, because our period in government as a military entity corrupted the military and drew us further away from our core responsibilities. And it affected also the efficiency of the military at that time. But with democratic credentials, the military is supposed to support these democratic credentials. And I think since then, it has been good. The military has been supporting it, and our democracy is enduring, is growing, and we hope it will continue to be strengthened as time goes on.
Some drama happened during your time in the Senate, especially with the Senate presidency. You know, between 1999 and 2003, we had 3 changes in that office. There is the Evans and Warren scandal, the Chubo Kadibo banana peels, and then the Anyim Pius Anyim. Then when we also came to 2003 to 2007, we also had some changes from Adolfo Swabara then to Senator Ken Nnamani. And people will look at it, some say it's bad politics amongst the Igbos of the southeast. Others insist that the instability was mainly orchestrated from the outside, primarily the executive in interference. Yet others say it was all part of the learning process. You know, what in your mind really happened?
Well, this is, as you said, at that time it was a learning curve.
Yeah.
And a lot of things were not perfected, and we're trying to create stop points for democracy. And democracy, the nature of democracy is, if you don't follow the will of the people,
yeah,
then the people will remove you. And that was what was happening.
Yeah.
A lot of things were happening. Influence could come from outside. There is nothing wrong with the executive trying to interfere in the running of the legislature, because the president will want to know who he has to work with. He has to work with somebody he can understand and the person can understand. That notwithstanding, the body of the legislature, like the National Assembly too, if they see, as it has happened, if they see a presiding officer probably too close or conceding easily to the executive, there will be moves to replace him. And those things that happened during those periods, they are learning curves.
Yeah.
And I do hope by inclusive, as time went on, these learning curves were perfected, and the turnover of presiding officer had been
greatly reduced.
Yes.
Yeah. We have seen the Senate and indeed the National Assembly evolve over time, and currently we are witnessing the 10th Senate session. How would you describe the legislatures thus far, especially the Senate, which is supposed to be the head that shows direction in the National Assembly?
Well, every Senate or every National Assembly members have what I will call the period of service. What happened in 1999 may not be prevalent now in 2023.
Yeah.
The issues may be different.
Yeah.
The position of the parties may be different. Mm-hmm. So usually the majority in the House will bow to the majority party, and it dictates the flow of events and how the legislature works. So I think it will not be appropriate for me to pass any judgment on any of the legislators, because the period of involvement is quite different. A lot of things come into play.
Well, people have really looked at also the kind of the quality of the representation, that we have had. And at your time, we could see some level of maturity, some level of experience, and independent-minded people. Unlike today, some have said that it's because the governors interfered in kind of imposing the people who now got elected in the National Assembly.
I agree with you absolutely. During my time, governors had no influence over who was elected or not. And we had independence of mind. Our guidance then was the party. Because we have loyalty to the party dictates what we do. And that is not to say that there were no rough edges with the party, but we had this conflict resolution ability to resolve ourselves. But as time goes on, we saw the influence of governor, which is unfortunate. The governors sponsor the candidates, and they want the candidates to do their bidding. The candidates can't do anything without reference to their governors. It's unfortunate.
All right. I've been speaking with Senator Tunde Ogbeha, in who is speaking, and will soon be rounding up, so stay with us. Now, sir, Jonathan in the Bible was the best friend of David. I'm wondering, apart from your wife, who do you consider your David?
Well, David is David. And Senator David has been my childhood friend.
Senator David Makimen?
Yes.
Okay.
And we never thought about the names before striking our friendship.
Okay.
It was later on, much later,
that they occurred to you.
Yes, that we now see that the names are synonymous with the story in the Bible.
Yeah.
But thank God that we've been able to be friends for over 60 years.
Yeah.
And still counting. And again, that is by the grace of God.
By the grace of God.
Yeah.
In fact, his late son was named after you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
His two names.
Yeah. It's been a great pleasure speaking with Senator Tunde Jonathan Ogbeha today in this conversation. And if I may say, may I have the good pleasure again of wishing you a very happy birthday. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Speaking with you, and it's so much that's interesting listening to your perspective and experiences. Thank you for joining us. And don't forget to watch out again for who will be speaking next with Oseloka Zikora.